Okay, so fern2 was raised in Coburg, and she was the very first professional wireless radio operator, and she was the first to serve on a ship at sea. And she was refused by 2 schools and didn't give up, and she qualified in the 3rd school, and then when she was qualified as a wireless radio operator, the Navy wasn't accepting women, didn't accept women on board ship. But she was fortunate to be able to get a job as a ship's radio operator aboard the MS Mosedale, which is a Norwegian merchant marine ship. And she made 78 crossings of the Atlantic during the Battle of the Atlantic. And the ship was called the Lucky Mosedale because other people who were part of the Battle of the Atlantic couldn't believe that that ship was never sunk. And in 1943, she received a war medal for her courage and determination from the King of Norway. And she also married the captain of the ship, and she retired from sea and stayed in Norway and raised her 2 children there. So this statue commemorates Fern as a trailblazer. 22 other young Canadian women followed in her footsteps as radio operators. A few of them did marry Norwegian fellows as well. So she was a trailblazer, and she just refused to take no for an answer. But that would have been significant in itself. But the fact that she did this during the Battle of the Atlantic, which was the longest military campaign in the whole war, and without victory in the Battle of the Atlantic, probably the Allies would not have been victorious. At least this is what Winston Churchill believed. So this statue is also commemorating all of the veterans who were part of the Battle of the Atlantic, especially those who sacrificed their lives for our freedom.
Tell me about, for those that don't know, tell me about what a wireless operator would do.
A wireless operator would send out signals in Morse code to other ships, but also would decode signals that came onto her ship. And every half hour, they had to be absolutely silent for several minutes because they had to be able to hear Morse code SOS and then be able to respond if someone needed help. So what fern2 did was she mastered the Morse code system. She also was responsible for maintaining all of the equipment on the ship, so if something broke, she had to repair it. And she was responsible for all of the code books. So if the ship sunk, she had to get those code books and take them with her or jettison them because they couldn't fall into enemy hands, and then she had to get into the lifeboat and hope that she would be picked up. Now, many of these merchant marine vessels traveled in convoys that were protected by other ships. But Captain Sunda didn't like traveling in a convoy because his belief was that convoys were easy to spot by U-boats and planes and the enemy. Whereas his little vessel could zigzag across the Atlantic and avoid a lot of the traffic. So he tried to avoid convoys. Sometimes he had to be in them, but if he didn't, then he would take charge himself of his own ship.
What was his vessel?
It was the MS Mosedale. It was originally was a freighter that carried fruit and vegetables, but when the Allies took over the merchant ships, then it became a ship that transported fruit and vegetables, passengers, and equipment that was needed by the medical corps. And in fact, one of the fellows in Coburg said that he was 3 years old during the war, and when he got his first orange, he said, "I owe that to the merchant navy, and I'll never forget it."
Last question, why, you're extremely knowledgeable in this. What's the background, or what drew you to this?
Well, actually, I got a call from a woman in Sudbury who came across the story, and she asked me, "Do you know of fern2? And I am currently the president of the Historical Society." So I said, "Well, yes, actually." I said, "The Coburg Museum Foundation, which is partnering with our citizens group, They did a display in 2015, and they included Fern Blodgett in their display. And so I was familiar with her and her story. But as I began to do more research, I thought, you know, she is significant. And my background is in education. And there are so many young people that I worked with who desperately wanted to do something as a career and were perhaps turned down or discouraged. And Fern wasn't. She wanted to be a sailor. She thought that she could get on board a ship if she was a radio operator, and she just kept meeting resistance and she never gave up. And so I think that story is inspiring, and young people will be able to see that statue and say, well, she did it. Maybe I could do it. So that's what motivated